Talking Music with Big Andy. On this week's show, Elviria, talking music with me, Big Andy.
Can we get it a bit louder?
Okay, right. Hello and welcome to the podcast. This week I have with me Amia, who is the singer-songwriter of the project Elviria. Hi, how you doing?
Hi, Andy. Good. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me on your show.
It's a real pleasure. It really is. It's a strange thing doing this show. I've come across a few bands and people that I've previously been completely unaware of. And just kind of come across music that I've really kind of liked, and it's been really a pleasure to listen to. And I have actually found myself thinking, you know, why have I never heard this stuff before? Why wasn't I aware of these people being around? Now, obviously, you're in Perth in Australia, which kind of explains maybe why I haven't heard a lot about you. I don't know, being as I'm in the UK. But can you give me a bit of background about yourself and how you got into the music thing and how you got to where you are now?
Sure, Andy. So my musical adventure, if you like, started very young when I was 5 years old, and I started to be classically trained in the violin. So I had a classical music background. And then, of course, as a teenager, I got into rock and roll like you do. And I was a big fan of a lot of classic rock, like The Doors or The Cult from the UK, or U2 even, bands like that. So I grew up with that stuff, playing all the time. And as a young adult, I would say, I moved into alternative rock more. So, you know, I love those bands like Pearl Jam, Nine Inch Nails, maybe the Tea Party, bands like that. And then there was electronic dance music, of course, which came along. A lot of that stuff was from the UK. So I loved the Prodigy, Orbital, the Chemical Brothers, bands like that. And then on the other hand, I've always had world music, which I've been a big fan of. So you know, there are bands you may have heard of, a well-known Australian band called Dead Can Dance. They had a large cult following. You must have heard the music around the place. So yeah, so I love their stuff. Yeah. Basically Enya, Lorena McKenna. So there's lots of stuff in there that kind of influenced me to get to where I am with music today.
Cool. No, yeah, I can. I mean, all of those bands. I love Dead Can Dance. I think their stuff is what I like about them is the fact that it's not all the same. There's such a huge variety of stuff that they've done, and I love that sort of mixture. I also noticed. I mean, there's a certain amount of I would say possibly influence from your cultural background as well, because you're is it Persian originally?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
I can definitely hear sort of like influence of the kind of Persian folk music and traditional Persian music in your music. Is that been a big thing within, you know, obviously growing up, I would imagine that's part of your family upbringing.
Yeah, I think, Andy, I think it was DNA more than anything else. I make that kind of music very naturally. And I think, well, the Elviria project as a whole, it's really it's a conglomeration of all the influences I've had in my life. So there is the Western music, like we just talked about, and then the Eastern music, like the Persian music, and generally the music and scales from the East. And what I'd like to do with the music is create music which brings people together, people of all different cultures and backgrounds and personalities. And that's probably what you're hearing is there is Western music, but it has that Eastern flavor to it. So yeah, you've hit that very well on the head.
It's interesting because one of the things that when I first started listening to it, apart from the kind of the electronic dance sort of side of it, it reminded me quite a bit in places of bands like System of a Down. With they use the similar sort of scales of music and that sort of thing in a lot of their stuff, and it kind of mixes in really well with the rock sound. But then having the electronic dance thing mixed in with that as well, it gives your music a real kind of different feel, something that's really kind of fairly unique, I think, as much as it goes.
Thank you, Andy. Yeah, System of a Down. Yeah, they're Armenian, which is next door to my background, basically. So yeah, that's probably what you're hearing is their influences closer to metal, I suppose, than Elviria. But yeah, certainly hard rock metal with an Eastern inflection. Yeah, and yeah, that's really cool. I dig all of that stuff myself.
It's an interesting thing. Have you had any difficulty finding sort of an audience as such because of the fact that it is so unique in its sound? Is it difficult to find people that kind of that understand it and get it and are really into what you're doing?
It's funny that you're saying that, Andy, because maybe 10 years ago or so it may have been the case, but what I've realized recently is that there is a real hunger, certainly here in the West and also in the East, for music from the other side. People find this fascinating now. And I think the world is really getting to a place where, you know, you hear about terms like global village or a world citizen and that kind of thing. And I think that is becoming more and more of a thing in music where, yeah, we're just basically discovering music from all over the place, indigenous music from different countries, or folk music, ancient, you know, Celtic music. All this stuff is really quite fascinating. And I think people are starting to open right up and go, wow, there's this incredible stuff that, you know, we can incorporate into our music. So, you know, there's lots of crossover projects like that going around, which is a great direction for music, I think, you know.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. It's nice to see things like, it's quite an interesting thing I've discussed with a few other bands, which is the fact that at a time when bands and musicians seem to be breaking down genre barriers and moving away from wanting to be defined by genres, we're in a situation where to get the music played online, especially with streaming platforms, you have to kind of define your genre to them so that they can put you in the little pocket. And it's like the musicians are breaking it all down, but the streaming platforms are reinforcing it, which is an annoyance, really, in a way, because it then means that certain bands get put in places where they don't necessarily quite fit.
Yes. Yeah. It's a funny thing, isn't it, Andy? The whole genre thing. I mean, putting any sort of art into a category or a box, it's a kind of advantage and a disadvantage, like you're saying, because the advantage is obviously people can quickly relate to it, and you can, you know, almost make a pitch and describe the music very quickly and say, you know, say in my case, well, it's rock world music with electronic dance music, rock EDM world, something like that. That's easy and simple for people to understand and digest, but at the same time, it can be very limiting because music isn't, you know, you can't describe music in 3 words or 2 words. I mean, it's beyond explanation, it's beyond definition, you know, so yeah, it's an interesting point.
From nothing is born all. A brave new pride is pumping through my veins.
I mean, the project that you do, Elviria, sorry, is it says it's mainly yourself, but it also you include international instrumentalists and vocalists and things like that. So, how do you connect with these other people that you work with?
Sure. Well, that's a good question. So, I mean, just getting back to where you started with it, as the singer, songwriter, and producer of the project, I typically start songwriting on my own. I come up with the ideas on my own, but then once the song in its kind of skeletal form has been created, and by skeletal I mean, you know, the lyrics, the vocal melody, the main riffs, the main tempo, the feel, all that is there. Then I open it right up and I work with a whole range of musicians to come up with that sound that you hear.
Right.
The sound, the finished sound is heavily instrumented. You know, there's rock instruments, yes, but then there's electronic dance instruments, there's strings, brass, often exotic instruments. So there's probably about 25 musicians per song. So I think it wouldn't be right for me to say, you know, it's a complete solo project. I've done it all on my own, because I certainly haven't. I'm privileged to work with a lot of very hardworking, talented musicians from around the world to bring the vision to a reality. Getting back to your question, so where I find them, some of them are in my hometown, Perth. Some of them are across the coast on the other side of Australia. Some of them are all around the world. So it really depends on what the need is for that song. I searched them out, and I've had so many musical adventures I could tell you about, where I'd be in the middle of the sticks, but with the right guy or lady that can do that kind of thing that I need for that song. So really, it's a journey and an adventure and a quest. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's good. I mean, the album you've got out. Oh, sorry, is it an EP or an album? Because it's only, is it? I mean, it's difficult to tell because the tracks are longer than a lot of track people's.
That's right. Yeah, it is an album. It's 30 minutes of music, and I had this dilemma when I released it, because I always wanted to make a record. I wanted to make an album, and I kind of went all out with that first one, as a debut. But the songs were, like you said, longer than traditional songs. The songs are, you got, the prologue is 1 minute, then you've got 7 minutes, then you've got 10 minutes, 6.5, and so on. So it's an album, but it's kind of like, how could you put it? It's a sonic journey. That's the best way to put it. It's not a quick pop kind of fix. It's, kind of turn off the lights and let's go on a ride here kind of experience.
Yeah. And it's called The City of Search. Yeah.
Yes.
And obviously with the track titles and everything, it's very much a journey through life.
Correct.
I mean, you have birth, life, love, death. These are titles that obviously make it a journey through the entire life of anything, a person, any kind of being, even a planet or the universe or whatever.
Exactly.
What did you have it as a vision? Was it as particular to a human life, or was it just a kind of a life cycle in general?
Well, the very good questions, by the way, Andy. So the City of Search, just to give you a bit of background before we get into the actual nitty-gritty of your question, is that the City of Search is obviously the first album, the debut album for Elviria. It is a concept record, like you're saying, and it has a kind of, I suppose, narrative that I had in my head when I was putting it together. But also, it's the first of a series of 7 albums that I'm working on. And it's if you like, it's a concept chronology. It's a concept narrative that runs through all of these albums. And the overall concept is that There are 7 albums. Each one is inspired by the sounds and cultures of one of the 7 continents. But also there are 7 emotional states or conditions that we experience on the journey to unconditional love, I suppose. That's a succinct way to put it. So that's the concept of the whole 7 albums, and I'm kind of about halfway through. Even though I've only released one, I've got other stuff that's coming out starting from this year in a couple of months. But getting back to your question specifically, so the City of Search, yeah. So it's really about the search for meaning and the search for unconditional love that we all, as human beings, are really kind of searching for. And that's on one hand. And on the other hand, it's also, you kind of touched it in your question. It's more cosmic than just one person, you or I. It's really about our journey as a human family, as a collective group, moving towards a more peaceful world, a more supportive world, a unified world where people are able to put aside their differences and really consider themselves as brothers and sisters, part of one human family. So that's basically what it's about.
Yeah, I noticed. I mean, there is a certain there are certain elements within the lyrics of the songs that are I don't know. They could be interpreted as being very heavily faith-based, in as much as not necessarily religious, but definitely spiritual in some way. And I just wondered what your faith beliefs were.
Sure. So to answer your question, Andy, first of all, I would say that if we consider it again as a broader context, and the way I look at it is that what are the common values that we can see in all of the great religions of the past and spiritual traditions, and what are the values that unite us, and people believe in, people of any faith or people of no faith. And we would see that all of the great religions had fundamentally the same spiritual message, which was love, compassion, unity, forgiveness, all that great stuff, right? Yeah. So me personally, I am a member of the Baha'i faith. I'm inspired by the Baha'i faith. And also I acknowledge all of the great faiths. So that what you're picking up in the music, I think, is the universal values of any faith, really. It's, if you analyze any of the great faiths, it's the same stuff. So that's probably what you're picking up on.
Yeah, I mean, it can be a difficult message for some people. I find it quite interesting. People of no faith, and sometimes people of different faiths, find it difficult to listen to music that kind of talks of any kind of spiritual or faith belief. And especially, and I know this may sound like I'm being a little bit, I don't know, I'm putting people in boxes maybe a certain extent, but I've found that rock music especially finds it very difficult to deal with the idea of faith-based music. I mean, Christian rock bands have always had a hard time, and I know that as I say, bands like, System of a Down had a hard time with the fact that they were putting a certain amount of their faith beliefs into their music, and people were kind of like a little bit against that, because at the time it was very much sort of like it was seen as it's that faith is one that may be causing problems for people around the world, and so therefore it's a problem for me as well. And I just wonder, how much has that been any kind of hindrance to you?
So Andy, the way I would look at it is that, first of all, just acknowledging what you're talking about, organized religions and so on, a lot of people are fed up, are disappointed, have experienced hypocrisy. Yeah. And for that reason, many people have turned away from organized religions. So that's one thing on one side. I kind of think you can't throw out the baby with the bathwater, as they say. And I think if we look throughout history, the different faiths that we have, and we can look all the way back to Hinduism. You can talk about Buddhism, Judaism, Christianity, all of the different faiths. They really spawned civilizations. They brought great good in their original messages. Now, what people did with the messages, that's a completely different matter altogether. And we're getting very philosophical, but I think people are the disappointing factor, not the original messages. The original messages are always about love,
Absolutely.
peace, good, treating each other with dignity and respect. And I don't think any decent person would reject those basic values. So getting back to music and faith, in my humble opinion, I think that any type of faith that causes disunity, we're better off without. And if faith is a unifying aspect, that's great. Now, as far as music goes, I think music should be created for everyone, not for people just of one faith or of certain beliefs. It should be something that anybody, regardless of what their belief system is, should be able to appreciate and enjoy and benefit from. So when I write music, I don't write music from the kind of strict angle of faith. The way I see music is that it's universal. Music is the universal language. So it doesn't matter what faith anybody is, in the same way as, if I listen to a piece of music, I wouldn't be like getting into, is the singer, is he Buddhist? Is he Muslim? Is he Christian? I mean, that I just listen to music. I think that's great. So I would hope that people would appreciate different types of music, regardless of who's, what faith background or whatever it was behind it that produced it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. Where did the idea come from for both this album and for the entire project of the 7 albums? Where did that?
The 7, yes. From? So the 7 Valleys is actually it was a poetic, mystical text written in the 19th century, basically addressing those questions of what is it all about? What is the meaning of life and the pathway to unconditional love or divine consciousness? So this particular text was inspired by a 12th century Persian poet called Attar. You may have heard of the Conference of the Birds. It's a well-known kind of literary classic. So that's that kind of echoes in the music as well. It's quite an interesting story.
Yeah,
I can tell you if you want to know, or yeah, up to
I
you.
mean, I don't know. It's an interesting idea of taking. I like the idea of taking sort of the old or ancient texts and bringing them into a modern setting. There's a few people I've talked to, and a few musicians I know who have done similar things with kind of either with traditional sort of English poetry and stuff like that, or as you say, with like ancient texts going right the way back to sort of early civilizations, things like that, taking the ideas from them, that sort of thing. I find that fascinating, the idea of bringing one thing and bringing it up to a new kind of new concept, if you like. I think it's
It's fascinating.
yeah, it's a very big project to take on. I mean, you know, a series of 7 albums, each of which is its own sort of album in its own little pocket, if you like, all adding up to one whole. It's quite a big project to take on. I mean, has it ever been something that you thought was maybe a bit too big a thing to take on in one go?
Andy, you know, sometimes I think to myself, I got myself in over my depths, but you know, it's times like that when you take a deep breath, you know, and look at the bigger picture, get out there and maybe go to the beach, or you know, ride a horse or something, and you come back, and then when you're fresh again, you know, you get back into it. I think for any musician, the advice I would give anyway to someone starting out would be go with your calling, go follow your heart, you know, what your dreams are, do the kind of music you want to do, and there will be people out there that will resonate and enjoy it. So, you know, yeah, it's a big project, but I think, you know, life is a big project as well. So you know, everything is big. So I think you just got to take one step at a time, and you know, you'll eventually get there.
Well, I must say, I really like what you've done. I think it's a fantastic album. It's really it's interesting for me because it kind of brings together lots of things that I like, with the kind of the electronic dance thing, the rock side of it, and the sort of world music thing element as well. I like all of that sort of stuff, and bringing it all together is really interesting, and it's great to listen to. I really enjoyed listening to it. So this album has been out for a little while now. When is the second of the 7 albums going to be coming out?
Sure. Well, there is a story to that, Andy. What happened was, so the first album, The City of Surge, I released it end of 2013, 2014. And so now we're talking about, kind of like ancient history, really. I mean, Instagram wasn't a hot thing or anything back then, but I put it out. I just, you know, that was the project that I'd been working on for some time, and I released it. And it kind of blew up on Facebook quite a bit, and Facebook was the biggest thing at the time. And so what happened was, about a year later, probably around end of 2015, I thought to myself, I need to quickly get a band together and get some more material. I needed, you know, I've got half an hour, but it's not enough to really tour or perform and so on. So I started work on what you just mentioned, the second and third albums simultaneously. So the second album, The City of Love, and the third album, The City of Knowledge. And I built a studio and started recording them. So when it came to mixing, I went off, I did something adventurous and went to the US, went to LA, and booked some studios and did the mixing there. And then I came back home and COVID happened. So there was the lockdown and everything else that came with that. So basically what happened was, my attitude was, like a lot of the people I believe that you've interviewed as well, is that I just kept chiseling away at it during the whole period of the lockdown. I kept chiseling away on those albums. So they're more or less ready to go. So to answer your question, this year, coming up, I have 4 albums, all unreleased, more or less finished all of them. So I will be stage releasing starting in a couple of months from now. I have the City of Search special edition version of that album with the same songs, but shorter versions. I've got instrumental versions of the long songs that are there, and also a bonus track. And then following that, I also have the other albums coming out in a staged format. So yeah, lots of exciting stuff coming.
Yeah, that sounds really good. Have you been able to, I mean, I don't know how well this lends itself to playing live. Have you been able to do any of that at all?
Well, interesting question. So obviously during the whole COVID period, you know, booking live shows, doing live shows was formidable. Even when last year here in Australia, things started opening up. It was a tough time. I mean, a lot of musicians would book shows and then have to cancel the whole thing after the tickets were sold and so on. So now is actually kind of like the right time, funnily enough. So I've got a band together. We are rehearsing, and we're looking forward to performing the material live. So yeah, so starting in about 3 months, I'm hoping to start, you know, putting on some shows and taking it to people.
That sounds good. That sounds really good. Is it difficult to work out the logistics of it? Because I mean, some of this music sounds like you're going to need sort of like 30 or 40 people. It's more like taking an orchestra on tour than a band, really.
Yeah, well, Andy, the plan is this right now. Basically, the band, so to speak, is myself and 5 other musicians. So I can kind of pull it off with 6 of us all together, with a keyboardist who's a bit of an octopus in that she can kind of play 3 keyboards at the same time. Incredible musician. So she will cover the brass and the string parts, and even some of the exotics she can bring together on the keyboard. Now, if the opportunity presents itself, and you know there is a larger crowd and the venue is big enough and it's the right kind of setup, then sure, then we can take more musicians, and have a string section, have an exotic instrument section, a brass section, and so on. So yeah, that's what I'm hoping for.
The problem becomes the fact that the more musicians you have, the more possibility you have for having to cancel, because if one person comes down with COVID, then
well, just a couple of weeks ago we did some film performances, and let me tell you, it was pretty stressful leading up to the actual the time. I mean, my cellist got COVID 3 days before, so I was scrambling around finding a cellist. Yeah. And there was lots of things like that. The cinematographer had vaccination issues with the venue, and it was very hard. But I think like all musicians, you just hang in there and you roll with the punches. And I think we're going to get through it. It's going to be okay. Live music will conquer again.
Absolutely, yes. I don't doubt it at all. So are the films that you were making, are they going to be put online for people to watch at any point? Or
absolutely, yes. We have quite a lot of film content coming out. We've got film performances. I have a music video. I actually put together, and I'm still working on it, but it's for the first song on the City of Search, which was the 7-minute song. It's called Birth. And this was one of those ambitious projects you asked me about at the beginning of our interview when you said, did you get yourself in too deep? And I would say probably with that one, I was a little bit too ambitious, but the video is a science fiction fantasy. It's not a typical performance kind of video.
Right.
And you know, that's going to be a good little number. I think you're going to like that. I've got a teaser ready for it. It's about a 1.5-minute teaser for the 7-minute song, and there's lots of good stuff there. So that'll be coming out this year as well.
Cool. No, that's really good. I'm really glad to hear that. I look forward to hearing the further albums, the future albums, and hearing the thing. The interesting thing would be to sit and listen to the 7 albums back to back all the way through from beginning to end and see how. I'm not sure that I have enough time, but I would love to try and do that.
Maybe with some breaks in between.
Maybe.
Take a tea break.
Thank you very, very much for coming on the show and talking to me. It's been really, really interesting talking to you and a pleasure. I would say to anybody out there, check out Elviria. I will put links to the YouTube channel and to social media. Look out for them in the future. Look out for anything that I was going to ask, actually, something I forgot to ask. Are there any other projects, or is everything at the moment focused purely on this, or are there other projects that you have that you're working on?
Musical projects, of course,
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Well, I mean, in the artistic projects or anything.
Yeah. I'm also an architect by profession.
Okay.
So that's always bubbling away, you know, in the background. But as far as musical projects are concerned, there is one soundtrack that I've been asked to do. It's for a documentary being produced in Cyprus, and about my great-grandfather. Actually, he was a famous calligrapher, well-known calligrapher, and the director got in touch with me and asked me if I'd like to basically do the soundtrack. So I have put together a soundtrack for the documentary, and that's an interesting project, and that'll be coming out soon as well, probably in about 2 months. He's told me the final edits and the grading for the film will be finished and it'll be rolled out. Yeah.
Well, that sounds
something.
Yeah, that sounds good. So watch out for Amir for any music that he does, and for the project Elviria. I will get it right one day. And I wish you all the luck in the world with it, because it's a fascinating idea, a fascinating project, and really good music. And I'm always of the belief that good music deserves to be listened to.
Thank you very much, Andy. I appreciate your time.
No, it's been fantastic. Thank you. So everybody out there, have a listen, check out the links, and see what you think. Thank you very much for tuning in and for listening, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Talking Music with Big